Shoshanna. Is that how? Beautiful. And where's that from? Tell me.
Well, I don't know. I was the last child, so I guess they gave me every name they ever wanted. Because it's a really long name.
And that is your full name? Okay. And so tell me the origin behind it.
My mom came up with the name, I guess. My father came up with part of it. Lord knows where the rest came from.
And now we have a business. That's awesome. So tell me about GAIAU, Product Design and Development.
Well, GAIAU stands for God and I are unbeatable.
Oh,
that's first of all.
That's awesome.
The rest of it is what I do.
That's awesome.
First of it is what he does.
That's right.
And I.
That's awesome. And you started this business how long ago?
Oh, let's see here. I started this business in 1979 with $50, 2 tree trunks, a home sewing machine, a metal card-playing table, 3 yards of fabric, and a 6-pound dog. His job was to sit on the fabric while I cut.
Wow. And you know they can't do that, right? They can't do that.
He got fired a lot.
Oh, that is a beautiful story.
Thank you.
And so that's put us at 40, wait, do the math.
40,
yeah, that's awesome.
I started out working for somebody else.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Wow, and you are located where?
2233 South Street, but I've been in a lot of areas. When I first started out, Lynn Goldblatt DeRocha was my salesperson.
Okay.
The story there is Lynn was married to Goldblatt. Remember Goldblatt?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, well, Lynn was married to Mr. Goldblatt.
Okay.
And then she divorced him and married Mr. Leo DeRocha.
Okay.
That's how she got the name.
Okay.
Lynn got up at 12 o'clock because she had maids and butlers. So one day I explained to Lynn how there were certain stores that I couldn't get in because of the color of my skin. She couldn't believe this. So I went to New York. I got good credit. You know, you've been selling me and shipping me in my little studio apartment. So I decided I got to go to New York because I need to see what they've got instead of just 1 or 2 fabrics. So I get to New York and I'm sitting there with Botanica Mills. I can say that now because they're not around anymore. And the guy said to me, well, where'd you go to school? You know, he's asking me all kind of personal questions about school and how come I'm not married and can I cook and all this stuff. And
how long ago was this?
Oh, this was in 73.
They're doing the same thing right now.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to make sure that
That's
not great. That's right when I was born.
Right. So I'm listening to him and I order my fabrics, just sample goods. And I think the bill was like $1,500. And he said to me, who do we call for credit? Well, my accountant said, take your statements and show them. So I had all my business cards. It had every title in the world. Fashion designer, CEO, president. I gave him the business card. He looked at the business card and he said, oh, well, I think we're going to ship you a COD. And I said, why would you have to do that? You've been shipping the company on credit and they've been paying. Well, he wasn't going for it. So I remember leaving that office in tears. And I thought, never again. So I went back to my hotel and I came home without what I went to go to get. And I was sitting there in that room thinking about the conversation that he had with me. And I remember him saying, as a young man, I wanted to have my own business. But I got married, had a family, and now I'm stuck doing this. Basically, I heard myself say, so why should you have a business when I don't have one? And I thought, So I called the guy who made my cards, and I said, I'd like for you to make me some more cards. And he said, we just made you 5,000. You gave them out already? I said, nope. I want a card, and I want it only to say, Jermikko, fashion designer.
Wow.
That's it. I went back to New York. About a month later, and I'm working with the same guy. And he's asking me about me, but you know, when we change the hairstyle, everything else changes.
That's right.
And I've learned in this business, don't say you know anybody, because that might be the person that didn't pay him, and now he's mad at you.
That's a good point.
So I simply said, well, you know, I'm sure Chicago is a viable fashion industry, and I perhaps have run across these people. At the end, he said to me, who do we call for credit? I said, call our office and ask for Ashley, and she'll give you what you need. Well, does Ashley have a last name? No. So I get back to Chicago. He called the office, and Ashley answered the phone. Gave him exactly what I had taken. Now, who was Ashley? My cat. Ashley, my cat was in charge of credit. My hamster was in charge of production.
I love it. I love it. The things we do as entrepreneurs.
Hey, you have to.
You have to make it happen.
So
Now go back to your hub zone, because I want to make certain that we understand. Where's your location at?
2233 South True.
And so you are part of a hub zone.
A hub zone is an area where it's economically diverse,
disadvantaged, right?
Disadvantaged and diverse. And you have to be in that area. You have to employ a certain amount of people from that area in order to be in that zone.
And how long have you been there?
Since 2010.
Okay.
In this new location, but prior to that, I was in another location.
And where was that location?
329 West 18th Street. But I started off on Grand, 12 East Grand.
Okay. So in those communities now, the last community that you were in, would that be considered South Loop on 18th Street, or is that considered?
No, it's Pilsen.
That's still Pilsen.
Still Pilsen.
And then the one that you had on the other
Still
location,
Pilsen.
that's still Pilsen. So,
I'm all over the city.
okay. And so, is what drives you to that community specifically? Is it because of the hub zone?
Actually, no. It's because back in the day, it was location for manufacturing. In order to manufacture things, you have to be in a certain area. At least you do now.
Yeah.
Back then, since I was at 12 East Grand, you didn't need to be in a certain area.
Right.
But now the city has discovered, I guess, that they can charge you more.
Yes, they can. And so I want to talk a little bit about kind of, understanding that you are a designer and manufacturing company and making sure that that's a distinction, because there's, different companies. So your buyers look like who? Who buys from you?
My buyers are retailers.
Got it.
But I've had to, along the way, educate my people because they meet me and they say, I went on vacation and I brought back this fabric. Can you? No, that is not what I do.
That's good.
Or they will tear a picture out of a magazine and call me and say, that is not what I do. There are people who do that, and they do a very good job at it. That is not what I do.
But what you can do is employ those people, correct?
Well, no, I don't employ those people.
Okay.
I send them to those people.
You send them to those people.
I stay in my lane.
Okay, that's
and my lane is I want to sell retailers no matter how difficult it is.
And what are some of your retail clients? Are you able to share?
Saks, Nordstrom's, Macy's. It used to be Marshall Fields. Okay. Nationally and internationally.
Okay.
I've been,
and so let's talk a little bit.
I've had to hide my color sometimes.
Hide your color?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I've had stores. I started off telling you about Lynn Gold's Black DeRocher right on the line. It's because I had a showroom years ago when the apparel mart was the apparel mart.
And merchandise.
It's not anymore,
yeah.
right? And I had the showroom, and I'd had customers come in, and once they found out who I was, they didn't want to buy it back in those days.
Yeah. Well, it's still like that today, though.
Really? So I learned to put the ego aside and just sit back. I sold half the people on Oak Street after I sold Barbara Glass as a sales rep. I didn't tell them who I was.
Yeah.
Oh, they weren't ready. They did not believe that this little colored girl could tell you how to dress. So sometimes you just have to wait on stuff.
Especially
don't get angry. Get smart.
That's right.
Even today I was reading an article not too long ago where I guess in the area that I'm in, they're trying to gentrify it.
Yeah.
And so the Hispanics that live in that area said, we don't want the Koreans here.
Right.
Well, wait a minute, isn't that what Trump just said to you? So instead of not wanting the Koreans there, say if you come in our neighborhood, We want you to employ
That's
us.
right. That's right.
That is economical rising,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay, don't get me on that.
Well, in this show, we talk about the, hashtag a rise and grind, because that's the importance of making sure that we rise, because we're grinding, right? We're constantly building on our company. And I know that you are, in the athletic wear, and I really want to talk a little bit about that, because we've seen the trends change where, what was athletic wear was so you can go and work out. Now we're wearing that as leisure wear, whether that's, going to get our hair done, going to hang out with friends, and I've seen that, with these big brands, Lululemon, just some of these top brands have just kind of come along, and we've watched how they are growing. So how has that, catapult your business with this trend, with this new trend?
Well, let me tell you how I got to that trend.
Okay.
I had a store on the Mag Mile in the Nordstrom's building.
Okay.
Again, the first African American to have a store in that area. And so one day in the store, this little boy came in with his mother, and he was not feeling it at all. And I said to her, "What's wrong with him? Why is he pissed off and he don't want to talk to us?" And she says, "Because he's mad that I won't buy him 2 color hoodies for his baseball team or whatever ball team." And I thought, oh, okay, that was it. A short time later, I was asked I'm a Chicago history maker in the History Makers, and I was asked by Juliana to go out to one of the schools to give a talk. And after my talk, I had to get something to drink. So I said, "Stop at this little commissary store. I'm going to go in and get something to drink." Well, the kids came in with their hoods on and their book bags, and the guy said, "I'm sorry, but you guys cannot come in here wearing them hoodies." So I got back in the car and I said, "Well, why couldn't they come in wearing their hoodies?" It was explained to me the bad rap that hoods had gotten. So I went back to my design studio. I like inventing things. And I'm looking at these 2 color fabrics thinking about the little guy who could not buy 2 hoodies and the kids that could not come in with their hoods on. And I invented 2 hoodies that zip apart, separate, and you can put any color you want together. So I'm looking at this hoodie and I took it back to my store. And I was asking my young people what they thought of it, and everybody thought it was cool. And this little boy came in with his mom, some other little boy. And I said, "Do you like this?" And he said, "That's cool, lady. That's really cool." So I called the patent attorney and said, "I think I might have something here." He looked at it, and we sent in the patent, and I got it.
And so you have a patent on that athletic wear. Wow.
Beyonce chose it to wear in her Lemonade video. So the hoodie that she's wearing with the zip here is my hoodie. And the rest is history.
And you have names,
it was called
right?
Diversification.
Nice. And you have names for your hoodies too, right? Different.
Swap out hoodie.
Swap out hoodies.
Swap out hoodie. So that's how it was born. For a purpose.
Yeah.
Then I looked at it and said, staying in my lane, diversification. I don't want to sell one hoodie. I want to sell tons and tons of hoodies. So when I opened the door and said, "This is what I want to do," God sent me Steve Mandel, who is the agent for my Ditka. It's a perfect hoodie for athletic wear. It's a perfect hoodie for sportswear, for fashion wear. And then we added more pieces to it. There's pants now, there's a skirt, there's a coat. And he's doing his thing, and I'm doing mine.
And is that a licensing deal?
Licensing, he's working on licensing. I have no idea about licensing, so I'm working on retailers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's because at the end of the day, people, that whole license deal can be huge.
It is.
It's huge. It's big business. So let's talk about capital. Your ask of what your capital, the capital that you're looking to get, and so what are you asking for? What's your dollar?
$150,000, and here's what I'm asking for it for.
Okay.
I read a lot about and see a lot of young kids that are dying, and when they're murdered, the first thing we do is we go to GoFundMe and say, "Could you help me bury him?" well, why can't we go to GoFundMe and say, could you help me keep them alive? So I'm looking at this hoodie one day thinking, I don't really wear hoodies. You know, I sell it and I make a good product, but it isn't something that I really wear a lot. And I got a call from one of the stores that said, could you put some embellishment? You're the embellishment queen. Could you put some embellishment on my hoodies? And when I heard that, the same day I was thinking about raising money for kids to bury kids. Why not raise money to keep them alive? Who wears hoodies? Our young people.
Yeah.
So why can't I find young people who are in high school, who are in college, who are in those neighborhoods where they only feel that the way out is the gun, and exchange that gun in their hand for a pencil, a paintbrush, and a sketch pad, and let them come in that factory and under my executive design directory, show them how to put this artwork on this hoodie. Let's then get it to the store.
Yeah.
Let's make the stores that the retailers that we buy from responsible, because you know what? They're your children. My son is already a pilot. I got him there. But these are your kids that I'm opening up my door and saying, get rid of the gun. Give yourself some pride in what you do. Because, you know, I go through the neighborhoods and I see great graffiti on the wall. Well, why do they have this graffiti? Because they don't have anywhere else to put it.
Yeah.
City's going to come wash it off. I want to teach you how to make money from it.
Love it.
Don't touch my coats over here. Let's just do the hoodie thing.
And so with this $150,000, you want to use this to create workforce development. Am I correct? And so being able to employ, a tailor, I would guess, right? Or apprentice tailor or some of that. So making them come in and really learn the business and get paid doing it.
There you go. And get a percentage of what you sell.
Yeah, and a percentage. Now that's what I call
There you go.
paying forward and
That's right.
capital investment.
That's right.
Because not only are you going to work, you're going to have a stake in the business.
There you go.
And that right there, there's some owning to that, right? So when you leave that job, this is my company. It's no longer that's her company, but it's also so creating that community that allows for people to thrive, and that's when we'll talk about legacy. That's legacy. That's ensuring that when you walk away, you know that that person that's helping you, who has a stake in the business, is also employing a family, but they can also train them, and you really create an ecosystem for them to come back.
That's how we bring back an industry. Not the way it was, but the way it can be.
That's awesome.
And do it with our young people.
And that investment, and I always say that the way to give is to be able to serve. Right? And so being able to serve, and you've served in this role for 40 years.
It feels like 40,000.
40 years to be able to now give, that speaks value. So many of our entrepreneurs who we've interviewed and people that see this, that they aspire to be who you are. And this is where we get to, because the most important thing that I always say is that we have to pay it forward. You can't take the money for $150,000 and go do it, but you have to figure out how do you pay it forward. And so, have you received any capital prior to now?
When I came up with the idea for the hoodie, someone said to me, "Why don't you do a Kickstarter?" Okay, no, not really. But then I decided, why not?
And how did that go?
It was very successful.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was
Did you
fun.
reach your goal?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, awesome.
I was determined to reach this goal.
Yeah, that says a lot, because that's what we want to do is train them. Because it also, and I'm sure you got new customers. I'm sure you did, right?
Yeah,
so not only did you get money, you got new customers. And that's the benefit of Kickstarter and creating crowdfunding, because you just don't get people to invest. They become your customers.
Right.
So making sure that happens. And so, when now that we know what your legacy looks like, and now I sit back and I say to myself, I could just see these kids going and they've got a stake.
I can see them.
I know, I can totally
going
see
to
it.
the office and listening to them make deals, and wow, this is cool.
Yeah. So with you, is that the vision you have for yourself? Like when you wake up every day, was that the vision? Because I think our visions change, but was that a vision that you saw? Like to see young people to be able to run, work in your company, but then have a stake in your company. Is that something that you saw?
I do believe that. 'Cause the minute you said that, I go back to something that I did, I think it was in the 80s. My office was at 3208 North Clifton.
Okay.
And graffiti was just now getting real strong. And my landlord was the hardware guy. And in there working was a young man, Hispanic guy. And I said to him, do you do graffiti? He said, no, but my nephew does. Mm-hmm. Well, I had this idea to take these kids who were doing all this beautiful graffiti and put it on jackets. Yes. Sweatshirts had not come into play in my mind to put it on jackets. But he explained to me that his nephew could not come because he had to go through a certain territory. And it was a gang territory, and therefore he couldn't get to me. And he couldn't drive him because of his time at work. So I thought, well, wait a minute. Yours truly was a Blackstone Ranger for about 2 weeks until my mama found out. I still got some gang in me. What if I go pick him up? And I had this 1979 Toyota Corolla with a missing floorboard. Wait a minute. It was blue. And some drug dealer, I went out south to pick up a friend of mine, and some drug dealer hit me on the side, so the door was bashed in on the passenger side. Didn't matter, it ran.
It ran.
So
That's
I
all that mattered.
I said, well, Eddie, I can go pick up your nephew. So we made arrangements for me to go through the gang territory to pick up the nephew. And what we would do is I would put a blanket over him until you get to hold your head down, and then we drive out the neighborhood. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. So I found a couple more kids, but they were rivals. So we made a deal. There's 3 of you all in here, and then there's me. The only gang leader up in here,
I know that.
we fight in here with the paintbrush. Now, after you get outside the door, you can kill each other, but not in here. Yeah. So the other 2 could go through the neighborhood that they were in, but I had to drive Eddie's nephew home and then come back through the neighborhood. So I guess it started there. And I still got a couple of those sample
I was going to
jackets.
say, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you still talk to that young man, the nephew?
I have not had contact with him in a long, long time. But evidently that is where that started back then.
And this story right here is really why I'm here today.
Okay.
Is being able to hear these stories of rising and grinding to ensure that there is impact for this city, because we know that there are viable businesses that is south and north and west of the city, and you are an example of that. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you. Thank you.